The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is a game that I truly love, and it will likely end up being in my top 3 favorite games of all time easily. However, it is important to note that it is not without its flaws. If you want to see a video of people singing the praises of the game, you certainly have an embarrassment of riches to pick from. For that reason, I want to approach this video from a different angle and highlight all the stuff that I feel Zelda handles rather poorly. Let's delve into the various aspects of the game and take a moment to acknowledge that The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is far from perfect. Just a warning before we begin, I went back and forth a lot on whether I wanted to capture footage from my active gameplay or not, and I decided to go ahead and actually just restart the game and only capture footage from the opening hours of the game. I had such a great time discovering all the different aspects of this game, all the mechanics, all the areas, all the everything, that I really wanted to make sure that that surprise and that sense of exploration is still there for you as well. So I apologize in advance for footage on screen that doesn't really match the topic that I'm talking about, but I just wanted to make sure that that sense of exploration isn't spoiled for you. The first thing I'd like to touch on is the abilities, because that's actually the section of the game that I have the least to harp on about. First up is Ultrahand. One aspect of Tears of the Kingdom that can be both positive and negative is how often it forces the player to interact with the Ultrahand mechanic. While it adds a unique gameplay element, it can feel excessive at times, potentially detracting from other aspects of the game. Once you get used to it, it's actually rather fun to mess around with, and you do end up gaining a few tools that make it a much more streamlined experience. But in the beginning of the game, when you first start playing, it feels like they tried to cram Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts into your Legend of Zelda. Fuse is another new mechanic to the series that I really enjoy, but it's not without its drawbacks either. One thing that I kinda didn't understand is why Nintendo didn't let you fuse weapons whenever they were in your inventory. So if you want to fuse a Moblin Fang to your tree branch, you'll have to equip your tree branch, go into your inventory, find the Moblin Fang that you want to get, drop it, switch to your fuse ability, and then fuse it to your weapon. And minor spoilers for an ability that you unlock a few hours into the game, skip ahead about a minute I guess if you don't want me to talk about it. But you do eventually get an ability that lets you put together your constructs in a much faster and more efficient method. But it's kind of annoying and strange that you actually have to go through the rigmarole of opening up your inventory, dropping the Zonai parts that you want to use, and then using the ability to put them together. It would have been so much easier to just select the blueprint and maybe have some kind of little toggle there that says, hey, take these Zonai parts out of my inventory if I have some. Moving on to the core systems of the game, let's go ahead and jump straight into combat. Combat is, it's Legend of Zelda combat. It's decent, but it doesn't really stand out as exceptional, and I can't imagine Nintendo really wanted it to. One thing that actually really surprised me early on in my game design career is that you actually want all the quality of all your mechanics to be pretty even across the board. If you have one mechanic that stands out as being absolutely incredible, then all the other mechanics will kind of pale in comparison. And I imagine that was at the forefront of everybody's mind at Nintendo whenever they were making the combat system. Additionally, the lock-on mechanic can be frustratingly finicky, causing annoyance during intense battles. You could be trying to lock onto an enemy that's literally a few feet from you, but since there's another enemy that's 10 feet from you in the center of the screen, it decides to lock onto that one instead, causing you to get waylaid in the side of the head. The controls in Tears of the Kingdom lack some desired snappiness, which can impact the overall responsiveness and immersion of the game. This is mostly felt whenever you're trying to switch back and forth between abilities quickly because the radial menu doesn't seem to pop up and react as quickly as you would like it to. The slight sluggishness in this process can result in some pretty unsatisfying gameplay moments and detract from the overall experience. It's a minor complaint, but let's be honest, most of my complaints about this game will be pretty minor. Another minor inconvenience is that the shop interface is still pretty clunky. Don't get me wrong, I love being able to walk up to a shelf and physically buy things off of it. That is pretty awesome, and I think they should keep that. But the clumsy way you have to fumble through, yes, I would like all of them. Yes, I'm okay with that price. Yes, please finish the purchase. Move to the next thing. It's just all a bit clumsy. One issue that arises frequently is the underwhelming rewards found in many of the shrine chests. Opening them to receive only an insignificant reward like 5 arrows can be rather disheartening, especially when you expect something more substantial. Another problem revolves around the camera when you're trying to place objects with Ultrahand in high up locations. The camera angles can cause difficulties and hinder precise placement, which can be incredibly frustrating. And I don't think I'm spoiling anything with this because it was in the trailer that Nintendo released, but you do actually get followers in combat in this game. And while these followers are very cool, their abilities are often not very useful during intense battles. The requirement to physically approach them to activate their abilities can be inconvenient and disrupt the flow of combat. Regarding difficulty, I must disclose that I may not be the best judge since I spent literally hundreds of hours playing Breath of the Wild. But the game's difficulty still feels a little unbalanced to me. There are instances where I find myself easily defeating bosses without breaking a sweat or taking any damage, while regular enemies really easily overpower me at times. On top of that, there are throwable items in the game that seem to completely trivialize many combat encounters. The difficulty tends to swing back and forth all over the place. Another bothersome complaint that I have is the dispensers for Zonai parts. I understand why they did what they did, but you can only get certain parts from certain dispensers, meaning that you'll have to sit there scanning the map looking for the particular part that you need and then fast travel there to get the parts. It can sometimes add some unnecessary backtracking and potentially disrupt the pacing of exploration. And this is a really particular issue that I'm not sure anybody else has because I haven't seen anybody complain about it, but I have a real problem with depth perception whenever it comes to Tears of the Kingdom. It's particularly whenever I'm using the bow. When I was playing Breath of the Wild, I felt like I can bullseye most targets pretty easily. But in Tears of the Kingdom, I find myself constantly not knowing exactly how far away they are. It also would have been nice if wiping out enemy camps had more meaningful rewards. While some camps offer small treasure chests, many times the treasure is rather lackluster, giving something like 5 bomb plants or something. Introducing some kind of bounty system where villagers would reward players for clearing camps would have probably added more incentive and satisfaction to clearing them out. On to the design of the world itself. This is a strange, I guess, I don't know if it's a complaint, but one thing that I kind of miss about Breath of the Wild that seems to be somewhat absent in Tears of the Kingdom is the very quiet moments of travel. Those times where you're just sort of running across the open fields and Link's footsteps provide some kind of rhythmic meditation beat, and you just kind of zone out and exist in the world for a little while. You enjoy the quiet, you see the nature, you are just kind of at one with the wild at that moment. But with Tears of the Kingdom, it feels like it's a little more swung towards the Far Cry method. There's a lot of things on the map that you just sort of needed to check off, and they may not have icons like a Far Cry map does, but it certainly feels like it's homework in a way. Now, the reason I actually don't have a huge problem with this is mainly because once you actually start to complete a lot of the things in Tears of the Kingdom, those quiet moments kind of start to naturally tease out. You eventually clear out so much of a map area that you do have those quiet moments of introspection as you walk from one place to the other, but that's only if you choose not to fast travel to your next destination. And probably one of the bigger complaints I have about the narrative structure of the game is the NPCs are so incredibly talkative. It can be incredibly tiresome, especially whenever you're trying to just progress through the story or complete a quest efficiently. A more balanced approach to their dialogue and a really good editor would have been preferable. Now, the visuals of Tears of the Kingdom can be absolutely awe-inspiring and beautiful. I've never encountered any other game where I legitimately wish it had some kind of photo mode to take a picture of these wonderful, beautiful vistas. But that's not to say that it's all beautiful either. There are definitely some places where if you get your camera a little bit too close, you're looking at a pretty ugly game on a chipset that's over a decade old. I only have a handful of complaints about the story, and don't worry, none of them are going to get into spoiler territory. But one of them is that they call these things that all the sages have secret stones. And I'm sorry, but the term secret stones is just kind of stupid. They couldn't have called them spirit stones, soul crystals, anything other than secret stones. I don't know. It sounds kind of lame. And my last complaint about anything story related would be the cutscenes. These cutscenes are great. Animated cutscenes you see throughout the story are really, really well done. My only complaint is that there's not enough of them. That's not to say that there's a dearth of them. I just want more. I enjoyed them so much that I want Nintendo to cram as many of these beautiful cutscenes into my eye holes as humanly possible. And that's pretty much it. I did run into a few bugs here and there in Tears of the Kingdom, but nothing really major. And I've had well over 100 hours in the game and have only recorded one crash during my playtime. And again, I want to stress how much I absolutely love this game. And plus, there's no forced motion controls this time, so 10 out of 10. But thank you so much for watching if you managed to make it this far. If you have any complaints about Tears of the Kingdom that just nobody else seems to be bringing up, please share them in the comments. I would actually love to get your take. And my name is Daniel Campbell, and have an awesome day.